Hi, welcome to Hope in the Light of Suicide. I'm Tammy White. I'm the founder of the Bobby White Foundation, along here with my co-host.
Good morning. I'm Bonnie Snyder.
So you doing okay today?
Good. I'm
Good,
doing pretty good.
good. Well, I just got my second COVID shot the other day.
Ooh.
Uh,
Moderna or Pfizer?
I got Moderna. I was down for the count yesterday.
Yeah, I had the same. I had the same experience. The first one, minor headache, a little bit of arm soreness. The second one, it was like day and a half, 2 days. I was, yeah, not not feeling it.
Yeah, my first one, I just had a little sore arm. Not too bad. But yesterday, I couldn't even use my left arm
No, that same thing I
at
did.
all. It was just like, ah. But better, still a little, not quite there yet, but 100% better than yesterday. That's for sure.
We're vaccinated. That's.
Yep, yep, we got it done.
Got it
So,
done.
um, we want to thank WeBeam TV for, again, the opportunity for giving us this platform to bring some information to you. We're going to continue along with the book we introduced last week, Progressing Through Grief. But I wanted to thank them, and if you want us to help support our show, you can go to Kindest, and there's many different levels of opportunity that you can contribute and help keep this going for us. So, what did you think of our second chapter?
I'm finding this book really fascinating. But let me back up a minute. Isn't Greg Schindler still doing
It ends March 30th, or April, April 30th.
tomorrow? Oh, no, today.
When by the time this airs, it'll end.
Okay, all right,
Yeah,
understand.
yeah.
But we still, we
But
still
we
want to thank
still we
Greg
still want to
Schindler
thank them. Yeah.
for his support.
And who knows? Maybe if you still give them a call and just sneak it in, say, hey, look, we may be a little late, but we really want to support the Bobby White Foundation. That would be super awesome.
Mhm.
So this book that we're reviewing, Progressing Through Grief, you can get this on Amazon. And if you want to go through it with us as we go through it, that would be really great. If you go to smile.amazon.com and choose the Bobby White Foundation as your charity of choice, a little bit of a donation will come to the foundation. But
Every little bit helps.
every little bit helps, that's for sure. So the second chapter is coping through self-care, which is probably one of the most important things that we can do as loss survivors, and probably one of the hardest things that we do as loss survivors.
Yeah, and the thing about, self-care, it's not a concept that is only applicable to loss survivors, but self-care is important, for anyone who's dealing with any, challenge through life, in our profession, mental health profession. We always stress the importance of self-care and how using that, as a strategy gets you through, when things are really rough. And again, especially
Well,
through loss.
and particularly now, what's happened, with everybody through the past year.
Yes.
It's anybody can relate to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's important for everybody, especially now, to be active in your own self-care. So anybody can use this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree.
So self-care helps you cope and reduces your stress and also helps you heal. Correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And self-care um, looks similar and at the same time different for individuals. I was working with a group of students yesterday, and we were talking about coping with anxiety, and I asked them what do you guys do to deal with stress and anxiety, and I'm, listening to their examples. Well, I do this and I do this. And, some of the mechanisms that they use, people are like, oh, that doesn't sound really healthy, like sleeping is one. And, I say to that, going to sleep and just, doing that recharge of batteries where, on one hand, yes, we're like, oh, you shouldn't do that because it's avoidance. On the other side of it, it's like sometimes you need that recharge, sometimes you need that reset. And I know I'm not a nap-taking person, however, on those rare times that I have taken a nap when I'm dealing with something, I remember waking up, it's like, that's what a nap feels like. I should really learn how to do that more often. Because I think of the traditional things, for self-care. I like nature, so nature walks, kayaking, going to the beach, hanging out with friends, those people in my life that, I know I could pick up the phone and talk to, when I'm in that dark spot. But yeah, like I said, I really enjoyed this
Well,
chapter.
and actually, both those things are on her lists here. Getting a good night's rest, and that means a good night's rest, and nap, and she even has napping in here. But like you said, it's it can be different for everybody. Getting a good night's rest for me has since the very beginning been extremely difficult for me. My sleep is so much different and not as good as what it was.
I think for me in the beginning, as it comes to sleep, and I want to say especially after Patrick, the team that I work, my coworkers, would come over in shifts, just to have somebody, at the house with me, which I appreciated, because it's like, you should really go in and try and lay down, take a nap. And, I remember there's certain times I was not defiant, however, it was like, I don't want to go to sleep. I don't want to take a nap, or I can't sleep. Don't tell me what to do, kind of thing.
I had that with people telling me to eat.
At the same time, oh my gosh, yes. One of my coworkers, she's a nurse, and I remember she called me on the phone. Have you eaten yet? And what? That's my brain hadn't even processed food. I'm still processing. My baby, my youngest, he's gone. Food wasn't even on my radar anywhere.
But that's another part of self-care.
It is. And so, she she has a very extroverted personality. And I love her for this. She says, "Give me your address." And I'm thinking to myself, no. No, and I laugh at, it's funny now. But seriously, it wasn't like, no, I'm not giving you my address. I don't want you coming to my house. Because of course it was like, all she could do was call my supervisor. Hey,
Yeah, she can find out where you live.
She can figure out where personnel would give them where I live. But anyway, perhaps. However, so I gave her the address, and she says, I'm bringing you breakfast. And I'm not, I refuse to hear an argument from you. And I know she didn't put it quite like that.
Right.
But the message was, don't argue with me. I'm bringing you food, and you are going to eat it. And a part of me was like, what? Like, what? And so I told her, I said, okay. I don't want anything heavy. And so she came over with, a couple of, breakfast wraps. And I just remember sitting on the couch, it was under a blanket, and I'm like, trying to contain my emotion. And I'm like eating, this wrap. And, later on I thought to myself, okay, you know what? I need to be strong for Devin, for my grandson. And so, then when the next shift took over, it was, here's lunch for you. You know. Now, under normal circumstances, I'm not a 3 meal a day person. Yes, I'm not healthy when it comes to eating. But I'm not a 3 meal. Typically not a 3 meal a day person. Like generally don't eat breakfast. I'll eat lunch and then maybe dinner, but that's it, or maybe just dinner. Um, but I did find myself reflecting back on really focusing on what I needed, or what needed to be done to get me through those first, you know, that first week, between finding out, and then the four days it took for me to be able to go and um, see him afterwards, and then those few days between seeing him for the first time after he was gone to planning the service and then getting to the service. The whole time I'm like, all right, I've got to stay charged. And I always typically will like raise an eyebrow, or, all right, I hear what you're saying. You're the strongest person I know. I'm glad you guys see this. Because there are times I don't.
Oh, I get that too all the time, and we don't
Mm.
we don't see it in ourselves. We don't. Yeah, I had that. My aunt came to stay with me for the first 2 weeks, and if it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't have eaten.
Mm.
But she would, and even if it was just like little portions, she made really super healthy stuff, and she would be like, here, just eat a little,
Mm.
just take a few bites, and I knew it would be better for me that I did rather than I didn't,
Mm.
and really the importance too of eating healthy foods and not processed foods is extremely important.
Mm.
And I found that out a couple of years ago when I was going through a pretty bad depression for several months, and part of that wasn't healthy and wasn't helpful
Mhm.
was I changed what I was eating from pretty healthy foods to processed packaged foods, and it makes a big difference. And when I realized what I was dealing with and where my state of mind was,
Mhm.
and I changed back to eating. I mean, we weren't ever fanatical about eating healthy, but really limited our processed food intake severely. When I went back to that, that really helped my body and my mind physically and mentally change back to being better than in a depressive state.
That was a process in our house too, because, um, prior to losing Patrick, um, one of us, either he or I would take turns preparing meals. We had at the time, Deb was, well, he was 9 when we lost Patrick. So we had a child in the house that had to be
Right.
fed, and like, Patrick and I, we can, I'm gonna go, I don't like fast. I'm not a fan of fast food. However, it's like we rolled into a fast food joint, picked up something, or grabbed a snack. We could function on that.
Right.
But yet again, we had a child in the house, and so he and I would take turns eating. After he was gone, I found myself like not wanting to cook at all. I mean, I would say it was nearly a year almost before I turned my stove on again. Um, or at least the oven. I don't think I used my oven for almost a year. My top side, to boil water or something like that. Um, However, no real like cooking regular food. And one day I don't know what it hit me. I decided I'm going to, cook something on the stove. It was weird, weird, strange, different. That's the word I want. Different, because I went from cooking for 3 to cooking for 1. Patrick was gone. Dev, he wanted to, spend some time with my daughter and his cousins, in Tampa. And I remember posting something on my social media page, and I was like, so my stove is happy with me again because, it's been reacquainted with me, and I just realized that my stove still works. And so, yeah, same thing. I went from, just nibbling on, stuff, to, let me go to the store. I can get a packaged salad. That will do for, that'll do me for the day. Or, let me run to fast food and get something. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? So, yeah, it was important. Now, it's like, hey, stove continues to work. I'm, like you, back to eating what I consider normal food or real food, and not the junk, not the processed stuff.
It took me a long time to get back to cooking, and when I first did, I mean, and it was probably 2 or 3 years ago, and I would cook, I'd make a meal, and I couldn't eat it. I'd make a meal. By the time it was ready, I couldn't eat it. I would just put it in the refrigerator and heat it up for later. And that went on for quite a long time. And I think it was probably 2 Thanksgivings ago. Usually we spent Thanksgiving with my husband's family, and which I did, a couple of years after his death. But that year, my niece had a baby, brand new baby, and things were just kind of weird. So it just didn't work out, and I decided, well, I'm just going to make Thanksgiving just as if he was here. And I did, and I made a full-out meal, and I posted it on social media. And my neighbor's daughter-in-law, she's like, or a friend, she was like, was Tammy having company? And she was like, no, she made dinner for her and Bobby. And she just got kind of a look, and I was like, but it felt good. And so now I cook all the time, and now I enjoy it more again. But it took a long time to enjoy it again.
It does. What that's a nice segue to, what I liked in this part of the chapter where that she calls restorative behaviors. And she starts the chapter off with, after a loss, it can feel like a part of yourself is missing. What can you do to start to feel whole again? Take positive actions you take to bring equilibrium back into your life are what we call restorative behaviors. And so, as I'm listening to you talking about, I made Thanksgiving dinner for Bobby and I. And I'm like, that is one of those where, some people might look at that and it's like, what is she doing?
Yeah, that's kind of weird. Like, he's not even there.
That's, that's so, some people would look at that as unhealthy.
Right.
Others would look at that as, okay, this was our way of, trying to fill that void that was left. Because I know with Thanksgiving, mentioning Thanksgiving dinner, deviled eggs is it's one of those. There's like certain certain things that has to be on our table for Thanksgiving because they've been traditions for us, as long as my children have been alive. Deviled eggs is one of them, and Patrick was always in charge of the deviled eggs. And so now, as we, as we're preparing dinner, we say, here's a way that we, memorialize, Pat. And it's like, okay, they're not yours. They taste a little different from yours. Or sometimes it's like, let's come very, very close to how you used to make them. And it is, it's like, granted, there are times when we might concern ourselves, or I would, say on the professional tip, all right, if we're having a hard time separating the reality from we're stuck in a place, that's one thing, versus I'm doing this to remember you by.
Yeah, to me, I think it's more of a way of honoring the person and including them, even though they're not physically here. One thing that we have in my husband's family, we have a plate. It's a special plate that is put out for holiday dinners. That is for those that we have lost, and that's a tradition that our family has. And so it's, kind of the same thing.
Exactly. It's important that people recognize that, again, how we all, we talked about this, when we were going through the Bill of Rights, that it's important to understand that people go through this process differently. Some of us may, you're feeling that? Hey, I'm feeling that too. You did that? Oh, I did that too. Then there are other times where it is, I don't know, that seems a little, but if that works for you,
Right.
that's fine. And then I think that's one of the biggest importance is recognizing, as it's been said over and over again, there is no right or wrong way to do this.
No, there's not.
There might be things that one does that, again, somebody.
Sometimes it might be questionable, but it's to each, to me, it's to each their own. Whatever is going to help you process through your grief. That is what's most important. Whatever's going to make you healthier in the end.
The next section where she talks about, releasing emotions, and, basically it's true. We've lost somebody important. We're going to have feelings about that, so let them out. And, there are times where I felt like I needed to contain my emotion or not, but then it's like, well, wait a minute now. Am I containing them for me? Am I containing them for somebody else? Or, to be more truthful, it's just a part of who I am. I've always been a master at internalizing. And it was important for me to recognize that it was okay to allow the emotions. And, there were times that I felt a little guilty because, I'd, been in the house doing something, and I'd walk down the hallway, and I'd, walk past Pat's room, and I'd come back up, and I would just, stop by the wall, and, like one of the walls in my house, and, like hands on the wall, and just like, collapse into tears for a moment, and, have a good anywhere from a 1 minute to 5 minute cry, and then it would shut off. And I asked, I found myself questioning, am I shedding these off consciously? Am I shedding them off unconsciously? And why am I not? Am I crying enough? I don't think I'm crying. I don't think I'm crying enough. Am I crying enough? Like, what is the appropriate level of emotion? And again, there's no, there's no answer to that.
No, there's not, and you're right. I've gone through that, and something could happen that, say, doesn't even have anything to do with Bobby, but it brings back an emotion or a memory, and then waterworks, and then afterwards it's okay. I'm okay. I'll be okay. But it's kind of and I've heard it say crying. It's a good way to release not only emotions but toxins in your body. And that's why usually when people, after they have a good cry, they do feel better.
Yes.
I know I do. I might be all slobbery and red-eyed and everything, but otherwise, emotionally, I usually feel a little bit better once you gain your composure.
Oh yeah, there's truth in that expression. Go and have yourself a good cry. You will feel better. Or a scream, or however you feel the need to let that emotion out.
I have to be careful about that, especially out in the yard, because somebody's going to think something's happening. My neighbor's going to be, Tammy, are you okay?
Exactly.
But yeah, releasing your emotions is it's important, and having somebody, that'll listen to you. I'm fortunate. I mean, my neighbor and I, we talk at least once a day. Normally, usually it's twice a day. And sometimes we can talk about nothing, and sometimes we can talk about what I'm going through, or now it's about what she's going through. And it's good to have a person like that in your life, if not more than one. Then the next one is slowing down. This was really hard for me in the very beginning.
To slow down?
To slow down. It's not, and I didn't realize it, because right after the fact, you're in kind of this mental state that you may not like be really aware of really what you're doing, Because I did take 3 months off from work, but I was still busy doing things, and I went, started going back to a networking meeting for the business, and the following Monday, which was 4th of July, I broke my leg, like really, really bad. And my mom and kind of I mean, looking back while I'm sitting for months and months with a ginormous cast on my leg saying, this was God's way to say, hey, look, you need to stop. You need to slow down. You need to deal with this. And that was like it was a 6-month recovery. The doctor said, oh, it's going to be 6 months to a year. And I'm like, oh, no, I can't do that. I don't have time for this.
Right.
And it was 6 months before I could really go back to work. And it really was a year recovery. And that's happened to me a couple times, is something will happen to say, and it's like, hey, you need to stop.
Like somebody's
intervention. And then I'd say, but did your intervention have to be so severe? But evidently for me, it needed to be that severe. But you need to slow down.
I found with that is, I ended up taking the entire month of August off. I just did not go back to work, and, my supervisor and, her supervisor, again, so thankful for them. Both, take your time, come back when you're ready, your job is safe, we understand. And, in my head, it was, take some time, process this. But the other side of my brain was, you need to do something, you need to I knew, cognitively, I needed to slow down. At the same time, I was like, however, if I slow down too much, it's going to cause me to focus on, what's going on, like the emptiness of the house.
Right.
And, in this, taking care of myself, I found myself going from the month of August, like at a crawl, doing, like little to nothing, or enough to, make sure that, of course, the house stayed clean and, taking care of myself, to when I went back to work, everything was, like go. I mean, I just like dove right back in and did not want to slow down. And I think, as I look back at it, that ultra fast pace, even to the detriment of, myself in some things. And I don't mean, detriment in a, catastrophic kind of way. I just felt myself, taking on a whole bunch of projects and then being like, did I just overwhelm myself? It talks about, being cognitively distorted and having an inability to think clearly. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where I was, is, I completely ignored the therapeutic properties, or process of taking, slowing things down. And instead of gradually getting back into the swing of things, diving back in head first, and, not realizing that my brain was not completely back on track to, to think clearly.
Well, yeah, and she says that if you don't take time to deal with and resolve the loss and what you're going through in that part of it, you kind of lose the ability to clearly think about other things and be cognitive about what else is going on.
Mhm.
I think in some cases they call that brain fog, and I've gone through that severely. I still go through that. But yeah, it's really important. And one way that she says here is find things that are relaxing for you. Go to the beach, which I have yet to do that, and I really want to do that.
On Sunday.
Oh yeah. Getting a massage. That is now I have done that, and there's a massage technique called cranial release technique,
Mhm.
and it's a massage on your brain, on your head.
Mhm.
And I tell you what, if you have never had that done, it is one of the best things that you can do for yourself, especially in cases like this, because it is rejuvenating. It was the most amazing feeling, especially the first time that I had that done. But even listening to music, going on a hike, you go kayaking,
Mhm.
you're out, going out into nature. Another thing that helps, but you got to do it, is making a list of what you want to accomplish that day.
That one, I laugh at that one
I do
because
too, sort of.
every weekend, as I get into like Thursday, this is my Thursdays, and then Fridays I typically don't work unless I rearrange my schedule a little bit. But I always write a list. This is everything I want to accomplish the weekend. And I affectionately call it my list of 40 because there are literally 40 things on this list to do. And the time Sunday rolls around, I have to laugh at myself because it's like you get 40 things on this list and you've accomplished one, or maybe two. However, on one hand, I could become like extremely frustrated with myself, like, Bonnie, why do you put 40 things on this list and you accomplish maybe one or two of them? At the same time, it's almost like it's very cathartic for me. It's like it's expected that, it's like I make it a point to put 40 things on this list, knowing full well I'm not going to get all 40 things done. Like I think of, last weekend, especially when you consider some of the stuff that I have on the list, it's like, oh, okay, I've got to, pressure wash the driveway. And, I spent the majority of last weekend pressure washing and, restaining my driveway and, the sidewalks, that run along, both sides of my home. And I told myself, okay, I'm only going to spend a couple hours on the driveway, and, whatever is not done, I'll get to it next weekend. Well, my nephew was helping me, and, he says, well, we've started this, let's get it done. And I'm like, okay. So I, go to the store, get a gallon of paint, like that. It's like, oh, I think 1 gallon will do it. Come back. And I was like, no, I need more than a gallon. And so I was like, all right, I'm going back to the store. I was like, I guess I should get 2 gallons. And it's like, okay, I was only intending to do the driveway. Then but then it's like, now that I've done the driveway, I really need to do the walkway that goes up to the front door, because it's connected to the driveway. Oh, well, I've got this. Let me have a curve that goes around, a rock bed in front of my house. And so, just like looking, I'm like, okay, so the one thing that I got accomplished this weekend was painting, the driveway and the walkways or whatnot. The other 39 things didn't get done. But that was okay. So I think it's important, when you are making this list, yes, absolutely make a list. But also factor in, if you don't get what's on your list done,
That's okay.
okay.
Yeah, don't make the list with the expectations that you're gonna complete the list.
Especially if you put things on the list that
You know,
there's no way. It's like, paint the driveway, paint the house. Bonnie, you're
oh
not
yeah,
getting
that's
that done
not.
in a weekend. You know?
Well, and I do the same thing. My lists are just as long, but if I accomplish one or two of those things, then I feel good.
Right.
If I don't accomplish any, then okay, Tam, you you need to get going here. But yeah, if I and usually if I'll be happy at 2. And even this week there was a couple days like I wasn't feeling well yesterday from the shot, and I had 2 things I really needed to do that I didn't think there was any way that I was going to be able to do them. But I was like, okay, just concentrate. And I accomplished those 2 things. That was the only thing I did all day long. The rest was laying on the couch. But I felt good that at least I did those 2 things.
Yeah, and for me with my list, it keeps my mind occupied because now that I could take the driveway off. They don't have to pressure wash it anymore. It's newly painted, so it's
That doesn't have to get moved to the new list.
No, it doesn't. And they're resurfacing our streets, so it's like we've got nice new blacktop on our road, and my driveway. And I'm like, what am I going to replace doing the driveway with? That's like another thing that I do to keep my spirits up. Keep my mind occupied. All right, so driveway that's coming off the list of 40. What can I put in its place? Because it has to be 40. For some reason, it has to be 40.
Well, I don't have that many. I do have a long list, but she does say, yeah, give yourself permission not to finish your list.
Exactly.
So, and the next one, which we hit on a little bit, is eating well. And I can't emphasize this enough. And it's not only for what we're dealing with grief. Any major health issues, it's so important. That's how we kept Bobby off medication for his multiple sclerosis for 25 years, is changing the way that we ate. And I've tried with some family members to emphasize that with other family members that have issues, and of course nobody listens to me, even though they can see how it has affected Bobby's health in a positive manner. But it makes such a difference.
I had to laugh at myself when in this line where she says, during times of emotional discomfort, we have the tendency to gravitate towards unhealthy comfort foods. And as I read that, that particular sentence, I'm like laughing internally. And I'm like, she's so right. Yeah, and she wrote that line just, she's talking to me. Of course I know she's not talking to me directly, however, I'm like, that line is speaking directly to me. I'm not one for junk food. I've never, I shouldn't say never, but I'm not a fan of junk food, and I typically, tend mostly to stray away from it. So I don't really like sugar. However, I found myself cookies, cupcakes, chocolate, chocolate, the ultimate comfort food. Stuff like that, stuff that I normally do not eat. I found myself, I'd buy like the 8-pack of donuts, and I'm not talking the little mini
Not
donuts.
the mini donuts.
I'm talking the really big box of, those chocolate frosted ones. And before I knew it, I would look over, and the entire box would be gone. And I'm like, Bonnie, you really got to be kidding me. You just ate a whole box of donuts. And of course, I flip it over and I look at the calories. Okay, so I've eaten 2,000 calories. But it was important, to excuse me, to step back and, revisit. Okay. Stop with the junk food. Stop with the unhealthy eating. Get yourself back into that routine. And, or recognize, why are you eating like this? Oh, it's because, where you are emotionally. Um, and
Well, it's not that you have to cut it out entirely, but moderation,
exactly,
Bonnie,
exactly.
moderation. But it is eating healthy. It is critical to maintaining your health. I mean, I really just can't emphasize that enough. And keeping hydrated. Um, I do okay with that. I probably need to do better. I don't probably drink as much water as I should. I try. But like at night when I go to bed, and we started this many years ago, we'd have a glass of water on our nightstand.
Mm.
So, and that helps during the night and when you get up in the morning, because you got these 8 hours that you're not consuming anything to rehydrate your body. And so at least I know I do that, good healthy thing. But eating whole foods, I have my aeroponic tower garden, and I've grow tomatoes, cucumbers, zucchini, lettuces, and I know it's healthy and clean foods, and eating foods like this that are not processed, they're filled with antioxidants, energizing, immune boosting nutrients, and like I said, it makes a difference on how you feel. Because when I was going through that depression, what I was doing is I was cutting coupons, and I was like, oh, well, I've never eaten this before. Let me try this. Oh, I've never eaten this before. Let me try this. And it was just a bulk of processed foods. And after eating it, even, I really didn't feel that good.
Right.
You know?
I felt sluggish.
Yeah. And both, mentally I didn't feel good. Physically I didn't feel good. And when I realized, what was happening, it's like, oh my gosh, you gotta change this. And I did. And really, both physically and mentally, it makes a world of difference.
It does. It does. Well, her next section she talks about is exercising.
That's a hard one. For me.
And see, for me, exercise is one of my goals. Like of course, I should say we can't tell it now because I was eating all of those, comfort foods, and now it's like, okay, Bonnie, again, get yourself back into that routine. And the idea of exercising, releasing all of those, positive endorphins, just, I find where, I think I spoke about this before, where I have a friend of mine who, I will pick her up and, take her to the gym with me. She likes to go first thing in the morning. And she's like, oh, that's how I start my day. It's like really gets me going. I prefer going to the gym at the end of my day. And, my reason for that is, when I get up in the morning, it's like, okay, what do I have to do for the day? And I, plan my day out. When I'm exercising, I like to work out unrestricted. You know what I mean? I don't like if I'm going in the morning, my brain processes, okay, you have to be done by whatever that specific time is, depending on, where I am, during the day. So it's like, if it's, say like on a Wednesday, gym is out of the question, I have to drive to where, I work out on Wednesdays. I leave my house, 6:30 in the morning. Now, yeah, granted, I can go to the gym at 4 when I get up, but that's not happening. But anyway, it's like, I like, for me, I find in the evening, doing it's a nice way to end my day, just to release, myself from all of the pressures and stressors that I might have been subjected to during the day. And that way, when I go home, when it's time, to get ready for bed, I, slide into bed and it's like, my brain is clearer.
Right.
But again, I look at it, wherever you do exercise, If you're a morning exerciser because it gets your day going, fine, do that morning exercise. If you're, like me, somebody who prefers doing it at night, fine. There's no, you got to do it here.
Well, yeah, it goes back into it's individual for everybody. I did, for a period of time, our friend that we had on the show, Kim, who owns the kickboxing gym, I did join her gym and did that for a little while, and then COVID hit. But to me, I mean, my exercise is taking care of my property. I have an acre and a half of land to take care of now by myself. And, trimming trees, trimming foliage, mowing the lawn. Of course, mowing the lawn, I sit on a riding lawnmower for 6 hours. But, painting the building for my business or painting my house, which is coming up, things like that. That's my exercise. At least, I'm outside. I'm getting the sunshine. I'm getting my vitamin D, and I'm outdoors. And so for me, that's my exercise.
And you're killing two birds with one stone. You're accomplishing your to-do list, and you're exercising.
And I'm exercising. Well, I never thought of it that way. Hey, that's a good. Now I remember that every time. I am killing two birds with one stone. Yeah, and I feel good after that. I've been redoing the little beds in front of the front entrance to the house now is the foundation office, and I even have this Bobby White Foundation sign up, and so I redid the beds and added some more flowers and put mulch down, and and I was telling my neighbor I was moving 10, 15 bags of mulch. I'm like, I forgot in a year how much work this was. But it looks nice too.
Oh, yeah, it does. Oh. Surround yourself with supportive friends. I think we are blessed, as it comes to having, support systems, or, some of us I think are more blessed than others. When I think of, the people off the top of my head that I can name that were there, and people that I didn't even think of, would be like my, champions for, support. You got this. We'll get you through this. There's, again, there's a group of women from, my high school graduating class that, we hadn't talked to each other in, years. And, of course, we're at the reunion, got back from the reunion. Of course, that's when I found out about Patrick. One of the ladies, posted on our, we have a dedicated Facebook page to our graduating class. Hey guys, Bonnie got home and, to the news that her son was gone. And there's like 5 or 6 women off the top of my head that I can think of that, will message, or comment something on, my social media page on a continual basis. And it's like, wow, it's like, that friend, that particular friendship was strengthened, and it's a good source of support. I think about people in my faith-based community, Greg and Jennifer, who we had on the show. My best friend who drove, like an hour and a half and said, you think I wasn't going to be here for you? And then, of course, our friendship,
The unlikely meeting one day.
Our friendship, and it's like,
Well, yeah, no, we are totally blessed. The community that we live in, the people that are around us is amazing. And, there's a lot of people that don't have that really don't. I had mentioned before when my mom came down for Bobby's celebration of life, which is actually 5 years today. She wanted me to move back to my hometown. And I was like, I kind of looked at her and I was like, but I've been here for 25 years. And when she saw the people that came to our home, because we had it at our house. We had a bonfire and barbecue, and people went out on the lake in the canoe, and had Beatles music playing. We celebrated his life, and I was even shocked, but I was so happy with the people that took the time out to come and celebrate. And when my mom saw that, she's never mentioned it to me again. It's like, because this is where it's supposed to be. This is where most of my support is. Granted, I have, most of my family is out west, which I have, long distance support, of course, from them. But, I've been here. This is my home.
Oh yeah, I mean the thing about that long distance support, what I find and enjoy is, with the the existence of, FaceTime and,
Oh, it makes it so much easier.
I can see, who I'm talking to, and it's not just the voice on the other end of the phone. So, wow. I mean,
It's funny that you say that. I was talking to my mom the other day, and she's got my sister's almost entire family living with her right now, including her great-grandkids. And my great-nephew, or no, I don't know if it was my nephew or my niece, but saw Mom talking like on a real phone. And they think a phone is, you see the person in the phone. And they thought that Mom was just talking into this machine and nothing was on the other side. So I had to say hi. I think it was my great niece. I said, "Hi, Livy, how are you doing?" And then Mom was like telling her, "See, it's a phone. There's somebody on the other side I'm talking to," but they're used to the picture phone,
yes, exactly.
these days. But that is, that is really good with technology, because even with my family here, my sister-in-law, she takes care of my great-nephew Nash, and she'll call me every once in a while so I can see Nash,
Gotcha.
Oh,
So, wow, we are winding it down. I know we had a little glitch there in the beginning.
Well, we'll finish this up next week, and but it's good. I mean, self-care is so important. And we want you to remember, we do have our T-shirts available on the foundation website. And reach out to the foundation if you need any purple folders or any help. Remember, there's always hope.
All right, this week we're going to talk about something exciting as usual.
We always have something exciting.
Yes, we do.
At least it's exciting to us.
But this is a question that comes up.
TV, hey, it is Friday night. We're not here. Yes, we pre-recorded once again because WeBeam TV is working over in Tampa with Dancing with the Stars.
62 Who Knew. I almost said Professional Mortgage Alliance, Joe's Bar and Grill. But actually, it's our 39th week of 62 Who Knew.
We're at the wonderful steampunk event at the Verizon Event Center here in 2019. I think it's still August, right? Yeah. Woo! Can't remember it.
Yes.
To be able to help businesses to do that part of it. But it's just been a couple of years.
Well, and I've taken the business card files from our business cards and made
entrepreneurs and
professionals of Tampa Bay. Welcome to your hour for getting the information, the tools, and the connections
Ian
for
Beckles on Radio Influence.
Or you say left hand white, and then they catch the left hand white. What it does, it helps you quick with hand-eye coordination. Yeah.
Well, that's kind
as your super connector. We want to introduce you to our 50-plus show partners. We got over 80 categories of expert contributor advice here on the Consumer Quarterback Show, and we want to
That's where we disagree, but that's okay.
I said nonviolent.
That's okay.
Because, you know, we're one of the only states that don't give them back the right. Got Jamie Limbaugh. He is from the Next Step image. I love that image because you were telling me earlier.
For the type of republic we actually are is actually very correct. Yet politicians and regular people use these words interchangeably, even though technically they are very different.
If you're an overdoer, overachiever, people pleaser, we tend to neglect